Aqui é o Sky e vamos hoje para uma entrevista maravilhosa com duas lendas, criadores da franquia Top Gear, antigos profissionais da Gremlin Graphics e hoje trabalhando em carreiras independentes. Hoje vamos trazer duas pessoas incríveis aqui. O senhor Barry Leitch.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Barry.
Hola.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
Are you ready for the holidays?
Oh yeah. Looking forward to it.
Take a little rest for the
little break.
Oh,
spend some time with the family. You know, watch some good movies, relax.
Let's join to the conversation, Mr. Ritchie Brannan. Yes.
Hello, everybody. Hola.
Guys, still exists.
So, yeah, it's good to be here. Nice to talk to you.
Before all the conversation starts, our subscribers have made some questions. The first one will be Jonathan. He asked, do you know that you will make this success with the game Top Gear in the Super Nintendo console when you launched it?
Obviously, you hope that things are going to be a success, but we had no idea that it would be certainly so popular around the world, and particularly in Brazil. That was really quite eye-opening. But did realize it had been a success when the senior management at Gremlin started to buy fancy cars. So that was pretty early on the idea that it had been a bit of a success. But we were just busy working it. We were already working on the next follow-up games. So yeah, it was just very much work, not really knowing whether things were going to be a success. But we were doing things that we wanted to do, making games that we wanted to make. It was quite a lot of freedom in that regard. So it was good times in that way. Financially, not so much, but...
Mr. Barry.
Yeah, we had no. I mean, I had no idea that the game would even be sold in South America. I think I've talked about this a few times, you know, because we always knew that America, Japan, Europe, and then South America. Oh, isn't it all jungle there? There's like lions, tigers, stuff. It's like no, it's a huge community of people who play this game.
Not everyone here has a monkey.
Well, I did know it was going to be released in South America. I mean, that was one of the reasons why for the choices of some of the tracks. So, but didn't know it'd be such a success in South America.
I had no concept that there was such a huge gaming market there at all at the time. I mean, it was incredible.
Okay, let's go to the second question from Gabriel of Linhagem Geek. Is a huge channel here in Brazil. He asked about Barry's inspiration for the soundtrack that you are quite remarkable.
I just wanted to go home. I wanted to get the tunes finished on chip, on the hardware, and then just go home because I was, like I said, sleeping on somebody's floor for the week.
Okay, and Upload asked, I think this will be for Rich. How was to compress these files, these soundtrack files, to the small space cartridges?
As I recall, they weren't a huge amount of data involved in it. There was
24K, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't big. It really wasn't big at all. The bigger concern was the amount of RAM that it was using for the actual playback. But yeah, the ROM was not a major consideration. We had a fairly small budget for it. We were trying to fit on as small a ROM as we possibly could because of the price of the ROMs, which would eat into profits. But yeah, we did no special compression. It was just, that was what the player took as input, and it fitted. We had the bigger problems with fitting in memory were not so much the audio, it was all the graphics, fitting the sprites, fitting the character sets. But code is probably the smallest amount of the cartridge, then graphics data, then sound. in that order. Yeah, tiny.
Yesterday you told me, Rich, that the basis of the game is a giant triangle. That the track doesn't roll and the car doesn't move. Can you speak about this technically?
Yeah, it's a fairly old technique that consists of a giant triangle with sub-triangles down the sides and down the middle. And then we simply change the colors and change the scrolling position of each line to create the shape of the road. So it's horizontally, it shifts each line pixel, and it can move them vertically as well. And it's just a question of basically running curves through the offsets horizontally and vertically of the track to create that rolling road. And right at the top, there's a split where it switches between two different character sets because we couldn't fit all of the horizon graphics and the giant triangle into the same block of memory. So just at the horizon, it switches the memory base address of the character sets to do that. And then sprites were multiplexed, so reused as much as possible where they could be. And yeah, the majority of it is just color switching and moving the way the colors come down the screen. A lot of it was pre-calculated into tables. A lot of it was offline calculation, and then just looking it up, how much we needed to offset things by, and very careful timing to make sure that hopefully people couldn't see flickering. And if people did see flickering on anything, we would do things like put a sprite over the bit that was flickering just to hide it. The flickering's still happening, but it's behind something, so you can't see it.
So you act as a magician, just taking all the things to have a different vision of what was.
Everything is faked. Everything is always faked. I mean, it's obviously it's not a super realistic method, and it's a tried and trusted method of doing that kind of rolling road, or was at the time, when you couldn't really do the 3D with the power of the processor that we had at the time. But yeah, it's a fun technique.
It's still great until today. Mr. Barry, I want to ask you one thing. What's the difference of working with older computers to play the soundtracks when you reach the Nintendo development kit? What is the thing that made you do these great songs you have put in the game?
Well, I mean, the Super Nintendo was the first console that had some built-in DSP effects, in that you could echo an instrument. And it was, so the first thing I did was applied echo to everything, but it used RAM to do this echo effect. I remember Ritchie leaning over and going, "See that number there? You've used all the memory for echo. You've got nothing left." God damn it. Cut the echo back.
Mr. Barry and Mr. Rich, what's the thing between make the body you constructed to the soul of your soundtrack put in the game to make the final product this huge success?
How did the music and the game meld together?
Yes, like
I think that's really is a question for Barry, because I mean Barry had seen what we were working on at the time, and he's the maestro. He knows how to put music together, and he has a toolkit of musical ideas and musical concepts. But I think really he should answer that question himself.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Rich, what was your memory of me coming down to Gremlin and working on this?
So it was, we've got somebody really good is coming. Somebody really good is coming, and you turned up, and you just seemed, you knew what you were doing. You were here for a reason. You were prepared, properly prepared. Like, you know, I wasn't. I was still very young. I mean, you weren't exactly old either, but I was young and naive, and I was quite impressed because I had no knowledge of music or how to put these things together. So it was just kind of like, I hope this is good. I hope this is good. And you came in, and you were just very, very professional, given what at the time were very primitive conditions and a very early look at what the game was, and absolutely just nailed it. I think first time you just got the idea, you gave something that, you know, everybody could immediately acknowledge was, you know, good and worked. So yeah, I mean, that's my memory. I mean, I think I was probably a little bit in awe, but trying not to show it.
So yeah, my recollection is that, you know, I was working at Magitech, and they're like, look, you need to go down to Gremlin. They've got another driving game they need to do music for. It's on the Super Nintendo. It's like, well, we don't have any Super Nintendo sounds. It's like, no, but they've got the dev kit now, so just go down, get it sorted out. So I believe the first time we came down, we had no sounds for it. We took a quick look at we found the music.s source code, and they were like, but we've got no sound, so I can't make anything. So around this time, I had to go to, I ended up going to Nintendo in Seattle to convert all my, because I had huge boxes of Amiga discs and converted all those to the Super Nintendo, even though those were all only 8-bit sounds and the Super Nintendo was 16-bit. It was just, I needed some sounds to work with. But at the same time, Gremlin had contacted one of the Chemco and said, hey, you guys got any sounds for this? And we got a floppy disk back. And I've actually got a copy of these files still. It was like 15, 20 different sounds for the Super Nintendo. So we got the phone call that Gremlin have the sounds in from Chemco, get back down to Gremlin, get the music made. Like, fuck's sake, all right. So I managed to, you know, you have to go around the office asking all the programmers, can one of you give me a lift to Gremlin so I can go and work on this game for a week? You know, because nobody had money for a bus, couldn't afford to go anywhere. So I end up going back down to Gremlin. I get in the office with you and Ash, and we've got the dev kit, which is incredible. We've got this music.s source code. We can compile it and make sounds. So from there, just start dicking with it. And that was when I found the echo thing, and then I start sequencing out that Vegas tune. I got found an Amiga from somewhere. Just write it all in a tracker and convert it into data statements on the fly.
I do remember not really understanding much of the documentation we had on the audio system.
Yeah, well, it was all written in Japanese stuff.
Yeah, it's what is this badly translated thing? But yeah, I mean, it was so primitive, and to have created that in such a short period of time, and it is, you know, it's a properly creative endeavor to try and put music to a game like that, when you're struggling so much against the hardware and the lack of documentation.
Well, I think by the time we finished the first tune, the Vegas tune, it was getting to be Tuesday, Wednesday, and we're thinking, how many tunes do you guys want in this game? And you're like, well, we're like about at least 5 or 6. Like, fuck, well, if we need that, let's just grab some of the music from the other Lotus games and just put an arpeggio on them, stick them in the game. Job done.
I mean, we were just wanting to make it into a fun game. I think when we first started, we were trying to make it too realistic. We tried to model things properly, model engines, and it was just boring. And we had the road was basically working. Most of the tech was working, but it felt really sedentary. And the answer was, so we'd got the car going at 200 miles an hour, and it just didn't feel fast. So we just said, well, let's just pretend that it's running at 400 miles per hour, and then we'll divide the speed down. And that looked a lot better. So we did that. And we just basically made it a lot faster than all of our models had been. And we ended up cutting them down. They weren't super complicated in the first place, but we had a little model that automatically went through the gears to run the revs to make that sound like an engine would actually work, and it just sounded boring. So we just took that out and replaced it with a let's put this curve in and see what that sounds like. Well, that sounds good. Let's ramp it up a bit more. That sounds better. Okay, that's what we'll go with. So at the start, we kind of wanted to have the game. We based everything on trying to make things quite real, in as much as you can with a very visually simplified game. But in the end, everything just went out of the window, and we just made it, well, no, that's much better. That looks much better. So we'll make it go faster. We'll throw all of our attempts to make things realistic out of the window. And same with the AI characters, AI drivers. I mean, we started off with them having some quite complicated behaviors, and they just got thrown out of the window as well, and it became a much more simplistic, this one can go this fast, this one can go this fast, we'll have this rubber banding because that actually helps. And we just played the game a lot and tweeted, said, is that more fun? Yeah, that's more fun. And it was very much just a judgment call of, well, that's better, that feels better. And once we got out of our heads that we had to be anything, you know, remotely real, and we just were going for the fun, it worked.
Tá legal esse vídeo, não tá? Você quer deixar ele ainda melhor? Vamos começar a assistir esse vídeo em inglês, sem legendas? Que tal você clicar aqui embaixo, na descrição, no curso de inglês do professor Jonas Bressan, o método BEWAY, por apenas R$ 497, ou 12 vezes de R$ 49,70. É mais barato do que uma pizza aqui na minha cidade. Você tem acesso a um curso completo, com um professor com mais de 10 anos de experiência, são mais de 150 videoaulas e você vai dominar o idioma tranquilamente. Meu querido amigo Jonas, lá no Instagram, você segue ele lá, procura Jonas Bressan, ele vai ensinar você algumas dicas, ele vai trazer informações e muito conteúdo gratuito de inglês para vocês. E mais, esse curso oferece certificado de conclusão. Ele vem contando as horas cursadas, você pode usar ele para poder fazer o seu currículo. É um curso completo, não é qualquer curso de internet. É um dos top 10 cursos mais vendidos do Brasil hoje. O que você acha que eu devia ter perguntado? Conta aqui para mim nos comentários. Quem sabe eu pergunto para eles e a gente traz depois no próximo vídeo. Que tal? E não deixe de se inscrever, não deixe de compartilhar com seus amigos e fazer esse vídeo rodar o mundo.